First of all, I want to welcome you all to tonight's informational meeting, and I hope that you recognize that by calling it as such, we are not calling it a debate. This is actually an opportunity for us to hear from both sides on Proposition 443, and we're looking for an informational meeting. And those of you that have any questions that you would like to ask, Sherry has note cards and a pen, and you're more than welcome to submit any questions you would like to ask in writing by simply raising your hand, and then those questions will be passed up to me, the moderator, and we will then sift the questions for duplication and making sure that we stay on topic. Well, first of all, I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Prescott Chamber of Commerce. I'm Sanford Cohen, Board Chairman, and I'd like to start with a quotation from Ronald Reagan. "Freedom is the right to question and change the established way of doing things. It is the continuous revolution of the marketplace. It is the understanding that allows us to recognize shortcomings and seek solutions." That was an address that President Reagan made at Moscow State University, May 31st, 1988. And tonight we're here to discuss two propositions, 442 and 443. I can tell you that the 442 discussion is going to be very quick. It may only take as long as it takes for me to read the proposition to you, which I will do right now. Prop 442, the City Council approved the proposed alternative expenditure limitation, the home rule option, at its special meeting on April 25th, 2017. The vote for approval was 7-0. With voter approval, the city shall be limited to the expenditure of estimated available revenues, whether such expenditures are less than or exceed the state-imposed limit. As an example, in 2018-2019, the state-imposed limitation plus applicable constitutional exclusions will allow the expenditures of $112,658,471. Under the proposed alternative expenditure limitation, we estimate expenditures of $164,808,824. If voters approve, the additional expenditure authority will be used for all local budgetary purposes, including general government, community development, parks, library, police, fire, regional communications, streets, utility operations, solid waste, fleet maintenance, facilities maintenance, golf course, airport engineering, and debt service. Revenues received from federal, state, and local sources will be used to fund such expenditures. Any questions on Prop 442? Hearing none, we will move on to 443. Proposition 443 reads as such: shall the City of Prescott adopt a transaction privilege tax of 0.75%, the revenue from which shall be dedicated to the payment of the city's unfunded liability to the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, taking effect on January 1st, 2018, and ending the earlier of December 31st, 2027, or at such time as the city's PSPRS unfunded liability is $1.5 million or less, as determined by actuarial value. In our discussion tonight, we have representatives from both the yes and the no on Proposition 443. May I introduce, first of all, for yes on 443, Prescott City Councilman and local businessman Steve Sischke. And for no on 443, former Prescott City Councilman and local business owner Chris Cookneo. Each representative will get 3 minutes to answer the questions from the podium, followed by 3 minutes of rebuttal. Questions will be divided between the representatives equally so that each will have an opportunity to go first on half of the questions. At the beginning, each have up to 8 minutes to make an opening statement. Chris Cookneo will go first and make the first opening statement.
Well, thanks for everyone showing up today. I wish we had a fuller room. I think this subject deserves a lot more community involvement than we're seeing here today. The first thing I really wanted to say was how much respect I have for Steve, and make that clear up front, and everything he's done for Prescott. He's been around here a long time, and Steve, you've done a lot for this community. You know, I also have respect for him because of Olson's Grain. They were here a long time before the big box stores were here. And instead of folding up when confronted with Petco and PetSmart and whoever came along, they branded themselves. They got out there, they hung in there, and everybody knows that at Olson's Grain, good enough just isn't. And they're still around, and that's quite a testimony. And just by getting on city council, ask me how I know, it's not an easy job. You don't get paid for it. You do it because of the love of Prescott, and you try and make some differences in your community. And I think many of our most important goals are the same. We want a secure financial future for Prescott and a retirement system that will be there for our police and fire. We just differ on how things need to happen. In this country, our emergency services are second to none, and I truly mean that. Just 2 days ago, we decided to go on a quad ride to Crown King with a man and his wife, and me and my daughter and my wife. And halfway between Crown King and Prescott, she flipped her motorcycle, hit the ground, and couldn't move. Luckily, I had 2 bars on my cell phone, and I called up the Yavapai County the Sheriff's Office answered the 911 call, and the dispatcher was awesome. She said, "Don't move." And I, "Why?" She goes, "I'm getting your position." And she got our position within 11 meters. And we're in the middle of nowhere. She said she got everybody on the phone. They started coming my way. She sent Crown King from this side. She sent Yavapai County Sheriffs from that side, and they were going to meet us in the middle, and whoever got there first, it didn't matter. And Yavapai County Sheriffs actually got there first within an hour. And the husband of the lady who was hurt turned to me and said, "That's why I never buy cars at their auction." You know, they came down that Crown King Road so fast. I resent that. Yeah. You know, they took such good care, and by the time they got there, they flew in a DPS helicopter to take her out. Wound up, she broke her pelvis in 3 places. You know, but the fact is, we had 3 agencies responding to a lady who fell off her motorcycle. And, you know, God bless America. I'm glad we had the equipment and, more personally, the personnel to respond. One word describes our emergency personnel, and that's professional. You know, do they deserve a pension? You bet they deserve a pension. And credit to City Council for thinking outside the box. They started coming up with other ways of solving this problem. Disposal of excess lands, running lean yet keeping service levels up. It's a start, but I think we can do even more. The problem is catastrophic statewide. I keep hearing we can't control what the state does, we need to fix Prescott. Are we fixing the problem for the city government of Prescott or the citizens of Prescott? Because even if a magic fairy came down and wiped the slate clean from the city, the citizens of Prescott would still be on the hook for more unfunded liability. Many elected officials don't even know how bad it is. I was talking with a county supervisor, and I said, "You got a problem too?" And he said, "No, we make our payments. We're not like the city of Prescott." And I said, "No, you got a $33 million unfunded liability." Well, I went in front of the county supervisors recently, and I said, I laid it out of what they're doing, and I was the last thing on the agenda, so the room was pretty much empty. And I finished with, I have one question for you. What do you guys plan on doing about your unfunded liability? And they politely said, "Thank you," dropped the gavel, and closed the meeting. I saw the same supervisor a little bit later, and I said, "You still haven't given me an answer." And he said, "We're paying it down little by little every year." That sounds like an okay plan. So I looked it up. Their unfunded liability has gone up every year for the past 7 years. They currently are only 41.75% funded. Our elected officials don't even know sometimes how bad it is. They don't know how bad the system is out there. And, you know, Steve has to worry about the sewers. He has to worry about this person's problem, that person's problem. When I was on council, I didn't know how bad it was. We're not against the tax as much as we're for a solution. And that solution is going to take every city, every town, every agency to demand action. Real solutions and not just new taxation from every agency in trouble. The PSPRS Statement of Purpose and Guiding Principles found on their website has a section on trust. It says, trust is engendered by transparency of our decisions and accountability for our actions as measured against sound expectations. We don't see that anyone has been held accountable. In fact, the other day, a guy asked me, why isn't someone in jail? Their performance also shows that sound expectations haven't existed at the fund for years. In the real world, this company would have been out of business a long time ago, but because the taxpayer never goes out of business, we can fail and just continue to tax him again and again without solving the problem. You know, the pitch from Yes on 443 folks, it keeps changing as reality sets in. And I don't know if any of you have really caught that. First it was, we need to pay off the unfunded liability. Then pay down the liability. Followed by, we need to shore up the general fund. And now it's save Prescott. You know, this tax is like putting gas in a car that you just wrecked. No matter how much gas you put in the tank, it ain't gonna run until you fix it. And we need to fix it.
Thanks for the cut. Thank you, Chris, for the compliments and for your service on City Council. Ladies and gentlemen, I have here a grocery bag. In that grocery bag, I have an orange. They would like us to think that this is one problem. But it's not. Then there's the apple. And I have to be honest with you, I'm hungry and I'm surprised the apple made it this far. I may end up taking a bite out of it here pretty soon. You know, the problem that they talk about is very, very different than the problem we're trying to solve. We have never said 3 or 4 different things about why we're doing this. It's always been to free up money in the general fund. You know, John Stevens wrote, there was an article in the newspaper on Monday, and one of the quotes from John was, nibbling around the edges of a failing system is bad public policy. And I've often thought about, you know, when I read that, for some reason I thought of 2 historical figures. The 2 historical figures I thought of were Ebenezer Scrooge and Marie Antoinette. And they also had statements about public policy. Ebenezer Scrooge made his famous decrease the surplus population public policy statement. Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake. I have to tell you that people making statements about public policy have been wrong in the past, and they're wrong right now. The first way that John was wrong was that we're not nibbling around the edges. We are hitting the problem head on. If anybody likes to nibble around the edges, it's the folks that think that the state is going to come in and save us. Because I have to tell you, Representative Campbell made a historic and a heroic effort to take care of our structured sober living home situation. And he did. Not without a fight, right, Noel? And the state, who everybody thinks, well, the state should come in and they should solve the PSPRS problem. Well, I'll tell you how they solved the structured sober living home problem. They said to Representative Campbell, I'm not sure how they said it to him, but basically said in what they did, we don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but you have the opportunity to have Prescott fix its own problem. They gave Representative Campbell the permission to have Prescott solve its own problem. I have to tell you that that's called nibbling around the edges. That's not attacking the problem head on. That's exactly what Stand for Prescott, Yes on 443 is doing, is attacking the problem head on. You know, Councilman Lamberson wrote a talk of the town today. And he said, we have a bill. We will pay the bill, and we will continue to work with the legislature to fix the problem. He says, I don't like raising taxes. I do, however, agree with paying our bills. I do not agree with turning our backs on Prescott's obligations and those which I was elected to deal with. And I told Councilman Lamberson that that couldn't have come at a better time. Let me tell you a little bit about Proposition 443, and I'm going to read from my pro letter that's going to go into the ballot. The 0.75% increase in our sales tax will free up money in the city's general fund to fully staff our fire and police departments, help us maintain full service levels at the library, Prescott's living room, and help us to continue to achieve excellence in our recreation services. We have that obligation, everybody. It's a no-brainer. It's the right thing to do. What they do to solve the PSPRS system, which is a lousy system, or it has been so far. What they do to solve that issue, it's up to Representative Stringer, Representative Campbell. They have their ad hoc committee, but we are going to go ahead and work to solve this problem for Prescott, and we promise that we will also, in the meantime, work with them to solve the problem. Having Prescott hurt for a few years is not the salvation of Prescott. I'll tell you what, I've been a businessman since 1980. The last 10 years have been tough years. I'm tired of hurting. No more hurting. 443 is a very fair way to deal with this situation. I think that the very least you need to do is take a look and say, okay, so if we wait, what are we waiting for? How long do we wait? I think that we really need to do some soul searching in this situation. Prescott deserves your vote, yes, on 443. Pension envy aside, hatred of the system aside, we need to make it better for Prescott, and we need to work with the legislators to make it better going into the future for PSPRS. Thank you.
Well, as usual, the audience much better job than we did in preparing questions. And so we've got a question that was submitted by a couple of people, and I'd like to make that the first question that we pose to our participants. And Chris, we'll have you go ahead and answer the question first. You'll have 3 minutes to answer, and then Steve, you'll have 3 minutes for a response. And I'm paraphrasing because both these questions basically ask the same question, but what would be your proposed solution to our PSPRS unfunded liability if the sales tax measure did not pass?
You know, some of the things that Steve was talking about kind of filter right into this question too, and we don't think the fund has been very responsible with our money, and if we continue to fund this, it's not going to help solve the problem at all. Let's make this kind of personal. I'm your investment guy. And in 2002, you were over 100% funded for your retirement. Every month you've been sending me the money I've asked for to invest for you. 14 years pass and you say, hey Chris, I'm getting ready to retire and go fishing. And my response is, don't buy worms yet, you're only 24% funded. But you know what? I have a solution. Give me twice as much money every month as you have been giving me. Trust me. I've made some changes. I think I can fix it. How many of you would give me more money? How many of you would trust me with your retirement? Probably not too many. And we're just worried that with giving this more money, it takes away the crisis aspect of it. We never act on anything until we're in this crisis situation. And by funding it, we don't feel that it's going to solve it, and we think you're going to run out of money pretty quickly. If you look at our payments going up and up and up every year, and our liability going up and up and up every year, we've looked at it and we don't think the tax is going to fix that. We think we're going to buy ourselves maybe a little bit of time, maybe a couple, 4 years maybe, and we're going to be in a worse boat than we are today. That's why we want a real solution.
Can you reread that question, please?
Sure. Again, paraphrasing, what would be your proposed solution to the PSPRS unfunded liability if the sales tax measure did not pass?
Boy, I got to tell you, that's a toughie. It's called pull in the oars, baby, because there's going to be tough times in Prescott. You know, Sanford, you asked for a solution. And Chris, with all due respect, your solution was doing nothing. So again, I say waiting, how long do we wait, and for what's at the end of the rainbow when we wait like that? You know, I have to tell you folks that I was kind of running through some of the studies that the Pew Center did, and the Pew Center is no friend of PSPRS. And I kind of got to the end, and it says, in the end, comprehensive pension reform must accomplish these 3 goals. It must develop a plan to responsibly pay down the unfunded liability over a reasonable time frame. Check. Proposition 443. Ideally, the plan should not impinge on funding for services and overall economic viability. Check. Proposition 443. Policymakers need to be held accountable to sticking to that plan so that over time, Arizona's pension obligations are fully funded. This is the Pew Center. You know, The key words there are Arizona's pension obligations are fully funded. I think that, yes, policymakers need to be held accountable. But I have to tell you, doing nothing is not a solution to this issue. Waiting is not a solution to this issue. What are we waiting for? Are we waiting so that Prescott can hurt so much that they solve Phoenix's problem for them, that they solve Yavapai County's problem for them, that they solve the state of Arizona's DPS problem for them? So, no, I have to tell you, I am not. I won't back down. I'm going to stand my ground. We are not going to let this thing go.
Do I get to rebut on that or no?
No. You started, he finished.
Okay.
So now, Steve, you get the next question, and then Chris, you'll have 3 minutes to respond. Explain how the problem with the PSPRS liability was created, and what will prevent a further recurrence of this problem.
Well, you know, I have to be honest with you. Can I say that that's way above my pay grade? I think that that's more of Mary Beth's situation. She has studied it inside and out. You know, again, I say to you, PSPRS is a lousy system. If I could choose, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you. I'm sorry that we have that debt. I'm sorry that people kick the can down the road so much. But could I explain how PSPRS got into that situation? Well, I'll tell you what, that's a real toughie, and that's not my problem. My problem is, how do we get Prescott out of its situation? So that's my answer.
That's all right. It's hard when you go first. But, you know, kind of kicks back to what I was saying originally. Is this a City of Prescott government problem or a Citizens of Prescott problem? We know that the Prescott PD is unfunded to the tune of $37 million. Their fund is only 23.9% funded. Prescott Fire, $44 million unfunded. Their 30% of their fund is funded. Yavapai County Sheriff, $33 million unfunded. The Citizens of Prescott are on the hook for that as well. Not just Prescott Police and Fire, but Yavapai County Sheriff as well. You know, you also owe $83 million to Arizona Fish and Game. You also owe $735 million to DPS. You owe money to the Arizona Park Rangers. This isn't just a Prescott problem, it's a statewide problem. You know, Central Arizona Fire and Medical, they're unfunded to the tune of $33 million, only 51% funded. They're in trouble too. You know, and truly, we're not as bad as Phoenix. Phoenix Police Department is unfunded to the tune of $1.7 billion. You know, Phoenix Fire, $853 million. And you know, don't forget that the City of Prescott just had a thing that said 60% of their sales tax revenue comes from folks out of town. So, you know, if you live in Williamson Valley, Mountain Club, Chino Valley, PV, you shop in Prescott, you're going to pay for the fire liability as well as Central Yavapai Fire Department. And, you know, I think one guy that explained it really well was the mayor of Bisbee. And I'd like to read a little bit of what he said. What if other cities just don't or can't pay? Do their retirees just get cut off? No, the fund still has to pay them. The mayor wrote in a letter to his state reps begging for help and begging them to support our representatives Campbell and Stringer. And Party wrote, Bisbee is a county seat on the verge of collapse with no real reform in sight. Our PSPRS contribution for 2017-2018 will be 84% for firefighters and 137.5% for our police officers. In my opinion, the gravity of this situation doesn't register because we do the right thing and we keep paying our bill. There will be a time in the near future when this will not be the case simply because we're out of funds. The $17 million in unfunded liability associated with our contributions will have to be absorbed by those jurisdictions still standing, like Prescott. They too will eventually fail and fall. So what happens if Prescott can't pay its bills without massively cutting services? How many
Chris,
know that?
we're at the end of our 3 minutes.
Can I finish one sentence?
Okay.
I mean, because I just got to ask people, how many people in here know that recently the state took away Prescott's ability to collect its own sales tax? How many people knew that? So now, if we don't pay our bill, they can withhold our money and keep it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me go.
And I would suggest that you guys keep an eye on the timekeeper.
No, she's holding up these signs.
Okay. All right, Chris, you get first crack at the next one. This is a question from the audience. Does the Citizens Tax Committee have a plan to present to the City Council on how to maintain services for the fire, police, library, parks, and office services if Proposition 443 fails?
No, we don't have a plan. It's not our job to have a plan. It's not our job to have a solution. That's a real simple answer. You know, it's PSPRS that is the problem with what we're facing right now. We didn't generate it, we didn't create it. You know, they have to fix this at a state level. We can't just keep funding it. And you know, in a while I'll show you why we think this is going to eventually run out, all of our money, even if we tax. Do we have a solution to how to solve this? No, we don't. But we're asking the voters, right? They're going to have to make a big decision. And when I was on council, we asked the voters as well. We took the tax to them, and we said, basically, you know, pass the tax and we'll keep life the way you know it, or don't pass the tax and we're going to have to make cuts. And they voted for us to start making cuts. And that's the same thing that's going on right now. You're going to have to ask yourself, do we want to drastically cut things that are happening in the city of Prescott, or do we want to continue to fund the fund, which is eventually going to lose all this money and we'll be back in the same place again? That's what we're facing with. It's not our job to come up with a solution. Yes, we're hurting. It's the job of PSPRS to fix this system that's draining all the money out of the city of Prescott.
Again, could you repeat that, please?
The question
Not
from
that
the
you were real
audience.
long, Chris, but I have a short memory. Yeah.
Question from the audience reads, does the Citizens Tax Committee have a plan to present to the City Council on how to maintain services for the fire, police, library, parks, and office services if Proposition 443 fails? So you don't have to answer the question so much as if you wanted to comment on Chris's comment.
You know, Chris, I wish that you would come up with a solution for us. You know, the strategic plan committee that Gene and Billy and I were comprising was really looking at what can we do? Do we raise property tax? That's illegal. The only way we could raise property tax in the city of Prescott would be to discontinue the property tax for a whole year and then go back to the people and say, hey, can we tax you more? So that didn't seem like a very viable alternative. Plus, you know, I'll tell you what, I've heard about regressive taxes. And people always say, well, a property tax is the most fair way. I gotta tell you, do you really think that the poor who are renting are not paying property tax in their rentals? So that's about as regressive as it gets, folks. You know, we talked about increasing utility rates. We'd have to increase utility rates so outrageously much that it would be incredible. It would be ridiculous. We talked about maybe a combination thereof. And that didn't work. The fairest way is the 0.75% sales tax. 3/4 of a penny. That's 75 cents on $100. That's Well, let's just talk about a $50,000 vehicle. That's $350 on a $50,000 vehicle. I got to tell you, that is absolutely the fairest way to deal with it, because 61% of all of that sales tax revenue is coming from people coming from outside of our community. From the tourists, from the people who live in Williamson Valley, people who live in the county area of the Mountain Club, the people who live in Prescott Valley, who live in Chino Valley. Do we refuse service to any of them? Do our police say, are you a citizen of Prescott? No. Do our EMS people say the same thing? No. I'll tell you what, folks, this .75 is absolutely the fairest way to deal with this situation. 443.
All right, our next question from the audience. Steve, you get to respond to this first. Prescott's pension liability can only be reduced if extra money is paid on top of our annual required contribution. How do you propose to both pay extra money towards our pension bill and fund the library, parks, and so forth?
Well, I actually understood that question. I asked Mark Woodfield, who is the city finance director, to give me a readout on what the .75 would actually give us. We figured we take in about $14 million every year in sales tax per percent of sales tax. So this would probably bring in between $11 and $12 million a year. And you count just a very conservative little inflation factor. That's not even considering how much we could increase because of people like Margot's hotels being filled all week. People like Olson's for Healthy Animals having more business. That doesn't factor any of that in. At the end of FY28, the dedicated .75 sales tax would have put in $122,757,322, and that would be only from the .75. Our general fund would make its normal payment that PSPRS bills us. This would strictly pay down the unfunded liability. Plus, whatever it freed up in the general fund past what we had to fully fund police, fire, the library, and Parks and Rec would go to an extra additional payment to pay down PSPRS. Thank you.
You want to just read that one more time?
Sure. Prescott's pension liability can only be reduced if extra money is paid on top of our annual required contribution. How do you propose to both pay extra money towards our pension bill and fund the library, parks, and so forth?
Well, I can tell you how they're going to do it. They're going to shift spending. One issue I have with the tax, it frees up millions for additional spending by council at a time when we need to watch every penny. At the March 28th council meeting, they had a discussion about ballot language and whether or not to require general funds be used to pay down the unfunded liability. You see, right now it all comes out of the general fund. This year, 6.5 million, and next year it's going up, expected to be 7.8 million. With a new tax that's expected to bring in $9 to $11 million, and you'll see I used the number 10 because I went right in the middle a lot. We could take all but $2 million of that payment out of the new tax and shove the rest right back into the general fund. Yes. Yes, we can, because with the ballot language, it says it can pay the liability. This number right here, your ARC, it comes from the general fund right now. It's 6.43 million in 16 and 7.8 million in 17. This number is part of your normal operating cost, and there's also unfunded liability in that number. So with the way the ballot language reads, you can pay for this out of this. So you can take the money from the tax to pay this down, and it shoves that money right back into the general fund. Now, you can take part of it, you can use all of it to pay, but is that going to happen? You know, council member and potentially our next mayor, Jean Wilcox, was absent, but she authored a letter at that meeting, and it's to be read during that discussion, and it read, "I am opposed to adding any ballot language which guarantees that at least a quarter of the general fund financial capacity be sent directly to pay our PSPRS unfunded liability." She talks about how over the next 10 years we need to expand public safety services and other city services. We need to bring our employees up to a market level compensation, raises, how economic development has been flat, and we need to be in public-private partnerships to attract employers. She also said we have a valuable asset in the rodeo grounds which pay good salaries. I work there, they don't pay good salaries. How the rodeo could become a state-of-the-art multi-purpose venue. The general fund was called the general fund for a reason, not a slush fund by any means. Does it give the council the ability to allocate resources in different ways as the needs change over time? On Facebook, Elizabeth Ruffner says this 443 will make funding for social needs. We don't want to spend our money this way. We don't have the money to spend. And we're already spending the money that we haven't raised on the tax.
Thank you. Chris, you get first crack at this next question from the audience. 443 may not fix the PSPRS problem, but it will buy time while the state, who has the responsibility to fix it, fixes it. It's better than throwing Prescott under the bus in hopes the state will fix it. Do you agree or disagree with that statement, and why?
You know, what we need to be doing is, we don't have a solution, but there are some things that we can do. We can support Campbell and Stringer's ad hoc committee as they look for answers moving forward. Can we do other things? Can we combine the entities like ASRS does? Right now, we're treated on an individual basis. Can we pool everybody together? I know the cities that have taken care of stuff for a long time, they aren't going to be happy about that, but I know we would be. You know, we see each other at events, being elected officials. We see our state representatives. We see all these people come through. And they love to shake our hand, and they love to smile and support. And you know what we tell them? You're not going to get our support in the next election until you fix this. We need the rank and file of police and fire to demand that the fund is held accountable, that they make sound investments, that they do the right thing, that even though the benefits sound good, they're going to kill the fund, and they have killed the fund. We need to rally the troops. You know, can the city, if I was in the city, I'd have a full-time person dedicated to doing nothing but rallying all these other cities and towns, because we're all sitting in our own little castles worrying about what's happening to us, and it's happening to everybody. What if we all raised up as a voice? And we need someone to rally that around, and the League of Cities and Towns ain't doing their job that way, in my opinion. You know, we need to get legislation at the state. We need to get a new proposition that'll help fix Prop 100. Because right now, anytime you put something into effect, like Tier 3's coming into effect, you can't fix it once you install it. You can't change it. And the Hall lawsuits prove that. You know, there are things that we can get done and that we can do to help work on this problem. But funding it isn't the one. We had a representative say, you know what, if you fund it, you just cut our legs out from every effort that we're trying to do. Because it takes the pressure off. Government doesn't act until the pressure's on. Did we see this coming at City Council? Was this a shock to us? We saw this coming for years. We were fully funded in 99, 2003, and it slipped to where we are now, 28% funded. We need to get on the ball and fix the problem the right way. And by making sure that there's no pressure on us, that doesn't do it. We need to support the people that can fix the problem.
You know the drill.
443 may not fix the PSPRS problem, but it will buy time while the state, who has the responsibility to fix it, fixes it. It's better than throwing Prescott under the bus in hopes the state will fix it. Do you agree or disagree with that statement, and why?
It's not Prescott's job to fix PSPRS. It's Prescott's job to enhance our general fund so that we can pay for services like police and fire and parks and rec and our living room, the library. You know, I guess in a way, Chris, I'm kind of disappointed because you were sitting where I'm sitting right now. And you know, you had a chance to fix it. You tried to fix it. It didn't happen. But I'll tell you what, like I said, I'm not going to back down. I'm going to stand my ground. We are going to get this taken care of, and we're going to get it taken care of for Prescott. I could give a damn about Payson or Bisbee or Chandler. I mean, to be honest with you, until Phoenix feels the hurt, the legislature is not going to do diddle. You know, Representative Campbell, who I admire, said, and he's doing what he can. He did what he could with the structured sober living home situation. They've given him an ad hoc committee along with Representative Stringer. But he said the committee is strictly, mostly informational. Again, I say to you all, how long do we wait? And what's at the end of the rainbow? And you know, here's the line of unfunded liability going up. Here was our plan to pay down the unfunded liability. I have to tell you folks, let's just say for grins that they're right, that this won't pay it completely down. Tell you what, if we don't do anything, it's going to hit the moon. Tell you what, I'm not backing down off of this situation, but what we do, anything we do, will make this a better situation for Prescott. Thank you.
By the way, I want to also thank on behalf of the Chamber Laura Warney, who is our timekeeper, which is not the easiest job in the world, but thank you, Laura. Steve, you'll go first on this next question, again from the audience. Prop 443 uses the word dedicated to describe the funds from this sales tax. Can the city guarantee that the city will pay down the liability at the same rate, as now, with the 443 funds being in addition to the current funds?
That's the way it is. We don't consider 443 funds as part of our normal payment to PSPRS. Here's the ballot language again, folks. It says, shall the city of Prescott adopt a transaction privilege tax of 0.75%, 0.75 of a penny, the revenue from which shall be dedicated. Didn't say may be dedicated. It said shall be dedicated to the payment of the city's unfunded liability. Not the normal PSPRS payment, but the unfunded liability to the PSPRS retirement system. I don't know how much clearer we can make it. Yeah, this money all goes. This, by FY28, $122,757,322 all goes to the unfunded liability, or ends when the unfunded liability is 1.5 million or less. And it's all in the proposition. I'm not sure where we're missing communication here. Look at the proposition, read it. That's what it says.
You know, I have a question. So what you're saying is that you are going to continue to pay the bill, the entire bill from PSPRS out of the general fund, and put the entire tax portion to that, to the unfunded liability?
Yes.
Okay, well that's good news for me. I like hearing that. You know, and you guys heard it here, right? Because that payment's going.
You heard it here.
Yeah, you know what? Because the payment's going up and up and up, and I'm glad that because really that's what's stretching us, right?
This year it's 6.43 million. Next year that payment's going to be 7.8 million. So what I was just told was we are going to continue to pay this entire thing out of the general fund and take this whole thing and shove it towards our unfunded liability. That's what you're saying.
The $7.8 million, no. The $7.8 million is our unfunded payment. That's what the $7.8 million is.
The $7.8 million is our normal operating cost and part of our unfunded payment. So we're going to continue to pay this out, but this is what's killing the general fund.
Sure it is, absolutely.
So it's going to keep going up. How are you going to restore Parks and Rec? How are you going to restore the library if you keep paying this money and you put the $10 million of the new tax towards the unfunded liability?
How are we going to do that if we don't do anything?
Well, because
I want somebody to answer that from the other side. How are we going to do that if we don't do anything? Again, I say, Chris, how long do you guys want to hurt? How long do you want to wait? Wait for what? Because there are no solutions.
And I don't mind. Because you know what? I think by discussion we can get a whole lot more accomplished than just going one-on-one.
I appreciate it, but
still,
we were having a hard time trying to figure out how to keep time with that.
And I got 1 minute left now. But
thanks, Chris.
But let me show you. This is the history, our history. Come around where you can see it. 2010 to 2016. In 2010, the fund made 13.47%. Our ARC, which is our payment, our bill from PSPRS, was $2.91 million, and we still added $3.2 million to our unfunded liability. And by the way, these were professionally done. In 2011, the fund made 17.37%. The ARC was $2.87 million, and we still added an additional $6.5 million to our unfunded liability. In 2012, it went up, and they added $7 million. These guys are making returns. In 2014, the fund made 13.28. We had an ARC payment now up to 4.07, and they added $13 million to our unfunded liability. This brings us to where we are today. 2016, they made 0.63%. Our ARC is now up from 2.91 to 6.43, and they still added on top of that $7.8 million in unfunded liability. Add the numbers. That's $14.23 million. Where are we going to fix this? It keeps getting worse. Even if we pay this off, how are you going to fix that? You got to zero.
It's called Shall We Dance? Here's the situation. I asked Mark Woodfill, who knows a little bit about city finances.
Yeah, he's a smart guy.
To give me a projected PSPRS payment with the dedicated tax. In fiscal year 18, our normal pension cost, that's what we normally get billed by PSPRS, is $1,346,976. 7.8 that he pointed to right there. That is our unfunded liability. Not the other way around, not combined. He said in fiscal year 28, our normal pension cost will be $1,900,000. The general fund can handle that.
But it keeps going up, and that's what I don't think anyone grasps here. We pay that. That's unfunded liability mixed with our normal operating cost. Even paying this paying this. Even with the fund making sometimes 13, 17% or 0.63%, it still added $7.8 million to the unfunded. Every time their actuary, they predict now that they're going to earn 7.5%. Over the last 10 years, the fund has averaged 4.5. When you have 4.5 to 7.5, you don't make your target. What is the rest of this? It's brand new unfunded liability. And it goes right onto your books. That's where you're getting this from.
Okay.
Can we continue
Thank
this
you.
conversation?
No, it's okay.
Sure.
We got more questions from the audience. Oh, yeah.
All right, let's take a look at, yeah, you get out of here. Let's take a look at what the fund's made over the last 31 years. It's made 7.4%. That's including all the years we lost dramatic money and the years when we made dramatic money. What is this percent that they keep talking about? That's not depending on last year. It's not saying, oh gosh, how in the world are you going to make 7.5% this year? No. That's an actuarial estimate. Actuarial estimates say, for the life of all these people who are working now and for the people who are coming on board and the retirees, this is what we're going to make. And they estimate that over the next 60 years, they can make 7.4%. They've made 7.74 in the last 31 years. Why wouldn't we think that they could do at least the same?
And you know, you're right. They've done such a good job over the last 30 years that we've gone from over 100% funded to 28% funded. That's how good a job they've done. To say that they're doing a fantastic job, they're not. And you know what? They were fairly stable. I mean, this fund started in '68, and they were fairly stable all through the '80s. I mean, I have their earnings rates right here for every year. In the '80s, they were smooth. They were making about 11, 10%. Everything was going good through the '90s. And then here comes 2001. They start losing money. And once you start losing that massive amounts of money, it's hard to get it back. You know, they had a thing called PBI, permanent benefit increase. The way they got to PBI was in the good years, when they'd make over 9%, 50% of that gain would go to fund this thing called permanent benefit increase, where they'd give people raises, the retirees raises, every month. And usually it's about $1,540 a year. You know what? You can't shave the tops of your good years and then absorb 17% losses in the bad years. That money needs to go into the fund. We have been mismanaged so bad. So now PBI's broke, really they can't afford to give it anymore. So in the name of pension reform, they get rid of it. We got rid of PVI, right? Well, we added a 2% COLA. Well, if you're a retiree making $60,000 and you get a 2% COLA, that's $1,200 a year additional raise. But you had to lose the PBI that was giving you $1,540. So did we reform? Or did we run out of money, change the system, and now we guarantee how much money goes that way? It's bad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to
Very spirited discussion, but we can return to our format. Chris, this is for you, and Steve, you'll have 3 minutes or so to respond. Some people think we will go bankrupt if we vote no on 443. Explain why or why not this will or will not happen.
You know, there's different kinds of bankruptcy too. You know, if you have Chapter 9, you can just reorganize, and that's what some of the cities in California have done, and some of them have done it well, some of them have done it very poorly, but we don't want to get ourselves to that point. You know, we are going to have to make some cuts and suck it up and just get on the state to fix it, support our people that are going to fix it. You know, this fund you can't keep sending them money. he was talking earlier about the Pew report, and the Arizona Republic reported that the Pew Charitable Trust has extensively researched public pensions and concluded that PSPRS was the third worst performing government trust fund as measured over a 10-year period ending in 2015. They also found that PSPRS paid the highest percentage of its investments and fees for outside investment management among the 73 largest retirement systems in the country. Last year in 2016, PSPRS spent nearly $129 million on investment management fees while earning less than $49 million. You know, here's how this works. I have another professional chart. You're the taxpayers. You give the money to PSPRS. It goes to an investment board. They farm it out to outside investors. This cost us $129 million. How much did we get back to pay our guys? $49 million. Does anybody think that's a good deal? Should we continue to support this? It's bad. It's bad. Last year, the fund paid out $826 million in benefits. You can't do that and bring back $49 million from your day's pay. You can't continue to do that. No matter how much you hope it's going to be and how much you want to fix what's going on in Prescott, you're not going to be able to tax your way out of this problem. It's going to get bigger. The amounts that were charged every month and every year is going to get bigger.
I know what it is.
Is bankruptcy an option?
Well, not as far as I'm concerned. It ain't gonna happen, not on my watch. I guarantee it. No way, no how. Again, I go back to the conclusion of the Pew report. Let me read this again. In the end, comprehensive pension reform must accomplish 3 goals. Number 1 is to develop a plan, I haven't heard a plan, to responsibly pay down, responsibly is the key word there, responsibly pay down the unfunded liability. They're not saying don't pay. They're not saying declare bankruptcy. They're not saying take away all of these people's benefits that they've worked for and we've promised them. They say develop a plan to responsibly pay down the unfunded liability over a reasonable time frame. The plan should not impinge on funding for services, i.e., reductions in police and fire and parks and rec and our library, and overall economic viability. Hey, it's all there. It's all there.
Another question for the audience, and Steve, you get first crack at this one. Wasn't there a number of options considered, and why did it come down to raising taxes as opposed to cutting expenses and services, looking at privatizing emergency services, going to sell land or other options instead of raising taxes to fix the PSPRS problem?
So really what you want to do is have us show you the love. Because I got to tell you, stuff like selling the land, that's all well and good and it sounds great. Great sound bite. But you sell the land out in Chino Valley that a well's attached to, that land was purchased by the water fund. That money has to go back into the water fund. You realize that very little of the land we own was actually purchased by the general fund to where that money would actually go back into the general fund? Heck yeah, I told you guys that we looked at options. We looked at umpteen options. You know, as far as making things more efficient, yeah, Michael Lamar, I got to tell you, when we hired that guy, the minute he opened his mouth, we said, this is the guy. This is the guy we got to have. You know, I think ultimately, you know, he's cut down about $600,000 worth of people, combined departments, stuff like that. But ultimately, you have to trust us. You have to trust that we're going to do the right thing. I mean, I got to tell you, I'm not getting rich in this deal. I'm not seeing any more business for Olson's for Healthy Animals. This is a labor of love, and you got to trust us. That's the bottom line. I'm sorry, Chris, if you don't trust government, but I ain't government. I am a servant leader, a public servant, not a politician.
I don't trust government. You know, I was part of it, but you know, we just heard Steve say, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. Why can't you do that? Because there's state law against that. So can we go to this ad hoc committee and say, you know what? Can you let us have a one-time sweep of excess funds to put down towards this liability and knock it down? You know, I think solid waste was sitting on a $5 million extra fund that was sitting there to supply if they needed new garbage trucks. You know what? Could they get along with a $2 million extra fund? Where are there other monies sitting around the city of Prescott? We owe $78 million. Well, can we come up with 40 and knock that sucker in half? Can the state say, okay, Prescott, go ahead, do this one time. Bisbee, do this one time. Phoenix, do this one time. And I agree with him. Selling land, it's a nice way of thinking out of the box, but I don't like doing that because you're selling stuff in a downtime. Well, now it's kind of hot, but are you going to get the money for it? And if you ever have to buy it back, how much is it going to cost you? You know, when you got land in Chino Valley with water underneath it, you kind of want to hang on to that stuff. But let's ask the state for other things we can do. And you know what? I sold out of my business about 4 months ago, so I can talk about this now. Why are we still in solid waste? Why aren't we farming that out to the private sector? You do that, you don't have to worry about those pensions. Doing that, you don't have to worry if diesel goes up. Why are we not thinking of the opposite way to go and do things? And you know, with this tax, we never talk about what is it going to hurt. You know, you got Bob Bean at Affinity RV out there in Willow Lake, right? We're going to take his sales tax rate to 9.1%. I had this written down somewhere, and I'm getting all worked up. I'm losing my place. But there's other cities in the valley that I think Sun City is at 6.7, 6.07. If we raise that up, will you not buy from our Affinity when you buy your $100,000 motorhome and drive down to Phoenix and buy it for $3,000 cheaper? Or what about those big Mondo jobs that you see people driving around that are $300,000? Will you not buy it from our guy and go buy it from somebody in the valley and save $10,000? We got to watch for what the other effects are. Lamb Chevrolet, York Motors, Tim's Toyota. These guys are all going to be affected by us bumping that up because you just voted their prices up. And now you can go down to Phoenix, what they have battled ever since Steve was little and I was like a thought. They've been battling going down to Phoenix. We got to watch for the unintended consequences of raising this tax.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, just for clarity, Mesa is 8.5, Santan Valley is 6.7, and Sun City is 6.3.
All right, our final question before we go to closing statements. And Chris, we'll start with you. Looking at the opposing view, what would be the impact of a yes vote on 443 in your opinion?
Well, you know, I saw an ad put out by the yes folks that not passing this is just kicking the can down the road. But I'd argue that passing the tax is kicking the can down the road. No government agency will tackle anything this tough until it's at a crisis level. We watched it grow until we had to start making cuts, close the library, don't hire people, brown out a station. We are already asking a lot from our guys in the field. And pay attention to this. Did you know in '99 we had 109 active members in public safety and 55 retired? In 2016, we had actually gone down to 106 active members and 137 retirees. Do you think Prescott grew a little over the last 17 years? You know, respect to the rank and file that hung in there and did the job day after day. So why were we so better staffed in '99 than today? Could it be that in '99 we were fully funded pension account? And last year we paid $6.5 million? 6.5 hires a lot of cops.
So you're going to really need to redo that question.
No, I actually have a different version of the same question for you.
Oh, okay.
And that is, looking at the opposing point of view, what would be the impact of a no vote, in your opinion?
If I was on the opposing side and they voted no? Is that what you're asking?
If they didn't pass it, what's going to happen?
If I was on your side and Prescott voted no, I'd be dancing in the streets. But you know, but what? What would be the result of a no vote?
I think we've talked about that the entire time. The result of a no vote would be further cuts in police and fire. Fire has the SAFER grant. They'll carry it through next year. After that, it's anybody's guess. There goes class and comp. There goes, you know, whatever services we can cover the general fund with in the library and parks and rec. You know, I have to tell you, there are other things that affect us. If there's a no vote, we're looking at, we have a new economic development manager in the city, and he's a contractor. It's a public-private partnership. You know, he's looking at, he comes from the Seattle area, from all the tech companies, and he's looking at making Prescott an incubator for cybersecurity firms. They're bringing 100 CEOs of cybersecurity firms to Prescott for a conference in August. I gotta tell you guys, do you really think that they're gonna go, oh my gosh, Prescott voted no? Oh, what the heck, we'll still come? Are you kidding? We want, I gotta tell you, one of my jobs is to lower the average age here in Prescott. The only way we do that is to keep our young people engineers, our techies from Embry-Riddle. Those kids are our future. Those jobs pay an average of $136,000 a piece per year. Do you really think they're going to go, I don't care if Prescott said no, we're coming anyway? I doubt it. I really doubt it. They're going to run as fast as they can run.
And finally, we have closing statements, 1 minute each. And Steve, you go first.
As soon as I get done with this, I'm taking a bite on this apple.
And you can take as long as you want, Mr. Dunbar.
I kind of broke it down. Preston, you want to come over here? Sure. I kind of broke it down this way. Folks, I'm sorry. I'm a little carried away here. Here's the way it breaks down. The first full year of this tax, which would be fiscal year 19. Out of the general fund, an estimated $6.8 million could go either way. $6.8 million if 443 fails, goes this way.
to the PSPRS unfunded liability. That's $6.8 million out of the general fund. If 443 passes, $6.3 million or $6.8 million out of the general fund goes this way to fully fund our library, to fully staff our police and fire, to fully fund rec services, and whatever's left over goes to supplement the unfunded payment. That's the bottom line, folks. It's who do you trust? Who do you trust to carry this into the future and make it work for Prescott? Thank you.
And you know, remind you what he said, that we are going to pay the entire PSPRS bill every year out of the general fund, and the entire tax amount is going to go towards the unfunded liability. Gene, do you agree with that as well? Because that's not what I read in the letter. Steve said that's what you guys are going to do. Is that true? Okay.
Thanks for giving me an opportunity to correct your misquote there.
Okay,
there were
thanks.
some things left out of the letter, but the ballot language does not guarantee that whatever we have in the general fund will go to pay down PSPRS. My point in that statement was the council needs the flexibility to decide on an annual basis whether we take that entire $6.8 million from the general fund and put it into PSPRS, or whether we take $1 million of that and apply it towards restoring the library, police, fire, and rec services. So discretion, year by year, was my point.
Thank you, man. It sounds like she doesn't agree with you. Well, and I screwed that up, I guess. Okay, here, I'm going to go right now. You ready? People have asked me why I'm even in this discussion. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't have to deal with budget shortfalls. That's Steve's job. I don't get a check from PSPRS, and honestly, the tax wouldn't hurt me that much. But I do care about the individuals that make up public safety personnel. How many strangers get between you and a bad guy just from a phone call? Who will rush 15 miles in the middle of nowhere to summon a helicopter to take your friend to the hospital? I did a couple of ride-alongs with our police and fire while I was on council, but it was enough to make me get a deep respect for the job they do and see how much pride they took in doing their job beyond excellent. They really do care about what they do. Many of these guys I went to school with. Some of the younger guys I watched grow up, I even babysat one of them, and he's a giant cop now. I got into this because I bumped into one of them at a gas station and I told him I would get him answers. The problem is that the deeper we looked into PSPRS, we found a flawed system that was tanking with no real accountability and no one seemed to care. The problems are huge and there's no easy solution. We need local officials to come together from all over the state to get real reform from the Capitol. The rank and file of public safety need to demand accountability from the fund and continue to monitor every decision. Giving the fund more money at this time is like buying new deck furniture for the Titanic.
Fix the system and then ask for a tax.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank our presenters tonight. We really appreciate the questions from the audience. Obviously, you were very heartfelt in your concerns about Proposition 443, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to present today's information to you on behalf of the Prescott Chamber of Commerce. We strongly suggest that you head out now within the city limits and go out and stimulate our economy in whichever way you feel appropriate. Thank you once again to our presenters, and thank you all for coming tonight.